So I think it's too soon to tell. I'm speculative in that piece because President Putin and President Trump are still developing or redeveloping their relationship, which is why all of our eyes in August are on Alaska,
Hmm.
because a lot rides on this. And the question is whether the two of them are going to make the decision that they're going to be the grand, power brokers here, or whether they are going to invite President Zelensky of Ukraine, maybe invite in the Europeans who have a vested interest in this as well. So I think we're all curious to see what sort of bilateral, unilateral decisions these two leaders make at this particular juncture, at this important point in the war, and then also in their relationship. I mean, this is the first time that Putin has met with an international leader, much less an American leader, since he started that war in Ukraine. So it's a big moment for us.
Monica, one thing I do want to mention as you talk about kind of the roles of each is that we didn't hear, but we know that Fox News, Brett Baier was on the plane with President Trump and did an interview. And the president said, I can set the table to negotiate the deal. It's not for me to negotiating a deal for Ukraine. The next meeting will be with Ukrainian President Zelensky, President Putin, and probably me. So it sounds like he's already managing expectations or already maybe potentially setting the table for that second meeting.
Monica,
I
tell us.
think that,
Oh, sorry.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead,
Sorry, go
Monica.
ahead.
Okay.
No,
Tell.
it's fine. I think that that's right. I mean, look, they're trying to set expectations because, of course, he's not the only party to this, and we've seen that Putin is a very good negotiator, and that he has a strong will, just like President Trump does. So again, it's early days, but you never know what can happen with these two. So sorry, back to you.
Talk to us about spheres of influence. What exactly, how do you define that term? Why is it so relevant right now, spheres of influence, to kind of understand that concept as we see these two major world leaders meet for the first time in a long time?
Yeah, so we're living in sort of a different moment than we were during the height of the Cold War, in the sense that we knew what the spheres of influence were. They were bipolar, the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. They were sort of settled in the East, and then you had the United States and its Western allies. And we're in this liminal moment where you've got Russian President Putin, who's made it very clear that he would like to reestablish authority in parts of the Soviet Union, if not the entire expanse of what was once the Soviet Union, and Ukraine is part of that. He's made that very clear in his writings and, of course, in his actions. And then President Trump has made it clear that he would like for the United States to assert authority and have more influence and control, not necessarily abrogating the sovereignty of other states, but having more control over portions where he feels as if the United States should have more influence. And that's the talking about Greenland, the talking about the Panama Canal. And so you have a moment, and then of course we could bring in Chinese President Xi, who does, China does not recognize Taiwan as an independent state. And so what you have is these leaders who are openly speaking about the possibility of rearranging territory, something that we thought had been settled since at least 1945 after World War II, and openly talking about the possibility of territory and getting territory under control, either through the use of force, which Putin is doing, or through sort of exertion of sort of power. The United States has a lot of trade power, has a lot of military might, and so you see this sort of saber rattling on the Russian side, and then on the U.S. side, you see President Trump having no qualms about using the U.S. economic strength to be able to try to get others to bend the U.S.'s way, including our allies. And he did that in his first administration, wasn't so successful, but he's appearing with his tariff regime to being more successful this time around.
Well,
So spheres. Go
well,
ahead. Yeah.
to this point, and the potential that this is a second Yalta moment and a carving up of the world, President Trump earlier on his way to Alaska on Air Force One talked to reporters about, a ceasefire, his goals here, and how Europe played into this. Let's just play that back for everybody.
There's nothing set in stone. I want certain things. I want to see a ceasefire. This is not to do with Europe. Europe's not telling me what to do. But they're going to be involved in the process, obviously, as will Zelensky. But I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today.
All right, that again was President Trump en route to Alaska earlier today. Monica Duffy Toft is still with us, professor of international politics at the Fletcher School at Tufts University. So the president there, Monica, saying this is nothing to do with Europe. Europe's not telling me what to do, but they're going to be involved in the process, obviously, as well. A little bit of a mixed message there. Is Europe going to be involved in your view? And we've just got about a minute left here.
Sure. So what's interesting about the ceasefire is that could be a quick, visible win for President Trump, and Putin can agree to that. He's already agreed to other ceasefires, and he hasn't abided by those. And what's interesting is if you look at the four parties that we've talked about, and we can also include China as the fifth, that is the one point of convergence that everybody wants a ceasefire, right? Everybody wants the violence to end at this particular moment. And then once we do that, we can take a breath. But ceasefires without enforcement is sort of like coffee breaks for militaries. The question is, how is it going to be enforced? And so far to date, we have not seen any of these ceasefires enforced. However, for President Trump, he can get that headline that he has now maybe gotten a guarantee or some sort of promise, and then we can work on with Zelensky and the Europeans about enforcing that. President Putin's gotten a photo op of recognition with a major international leader, the United States. And then Zelensky, at least, he is getting a heard. He's not going to be eaten at the meal, right? That he's actually being heard, even though he's not at the table, if they actually do agree to this next meeting with him.